Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. So that's pretty much it for the season for brown trout, sea trout and salmon fly anglers. Currane, Sheelin and a few other lakes are still open until October the 12th, but for the vast majority of you, the rods are being put away for the winter. Over the coming few weeks, we'll be reviewing how the season went on the rivers and lochs around Ireland for salmon and brown trout, so do stay tuned for those episodes. But this week we catch up with a salmon angler who moved over from England just 3 years ago and discovered salmon fishing that he is enthralled to. You might have seen some of George Kavanagh's incredible images from the shore on Instagram, and it was no surprise to learn that George is a commercial photographer who has worked all around the world on photo shoots. Salmon fishing is his other passion though, and the recent move to Ireland opened his eyes to the salmon fishing that was on his doorstep. And sometimes, Tom, it just takes someone to come in from elsewhere, I suppose, to maybe make you appreciate what we actually have here.
Yeah, good man, Dara. It really does actually sometimes, because somebody coming in, they have a different perspective sometimes, and they can see things that, sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that kind of way. And, and someone like George has come in and seen the beauty that's around here and see what we have. And, he reminds us that seeing it day in, day out of, God, yeah, George, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. And when he makes fun, I think when he was saying is like comparable salmon fishing for him when he was living in England might have been 5-6 hours away.
Yeah, now he's going, oh my God, it's within the hour. Ooh.
Yeah.
Less, what are we saying,
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I know the season has been tough for a lot of people and I know salmon numbers are down. But George is testament, I think, to the fact of A, the passion, B, getting out as much as possible. He's just like, he comes across, you'll hear it, like he's just mad keen, mad passionate about it. And he, he's getting good results from it as well. So I think it's a kind of a nice positive fill up to hear somebody like this so positive about the fishing.
Yeah, no, fair play to George. And, it's something that we come across a lot here talking to salmon anglers. Like, you got to put in the time, and how some anglers have noticed, all right, the amount of time that they put in, right? You have to put in more to get the returns. But, at the end of the day, if you put it in, you will get the results. You have to put it in, though.
Exactly. And, try and keep your passion up and enthusiasm up at the same time. I know it can be hard, but, in fairness, and George mentioned it, I think he was on the Nor, but then he found a lot of success on the shore. So, and likewise, actually, when we spoke to James Barry as well. So it's not all doom and gloom anyway. So good to talk to him, and you'll hear it's a good interview with George, and also some tips on how to take photos as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting for that because, these days with angling, there's a lot more photography involved because, it's, you're taking photos of fish. So it was great to listen to him.
Yeah.
And a couple of tips that he has there, and also as well, the other little camera that he uses, which he goes into, is great.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of guys using this, if you want to go one step above from your phone, which is well worth doing,
Definitely well worth a listen. Before we get on to that then, I suppose just a couple of other things. Another
doom and gloom
bloody salmon farm escape.
Yeah.
This time up in Antrim, I believe, I just read it, this is from the BBC website, up to 5,000 farm salmon may have escaped from a site in Glenarm, County Antrim, according to the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. It said, this sounds familiar, a rip in the net of a farm salmon cage had been found on Sunday evening. And they reckon, up to 5,000 fish. So again, this is what, the third one now in the last few weeks?
To be honest with you, I think this alone, leaving aside everything else, from open pen, salmon farming. This alone is enough of an argument for it to be moved inland.
Yeah.
Really it is. This is affecting the strain of local salmon. This is possible, what can happen with interbreeding, intermingling with the native wild stocks. This is not good.
And let's not forget Billy Smith of Galway Bay Against Salmon Cages, who told us is that, as well as far from the governments, in Ireland and the UK, the Irish government anyway, they want to treble the amount of production. So if this kind of stuff is happening at the moment and they want to treble it, what the hell is it going to be like in terms of escapees in the years to come, if there's no action taken? So it's
and this is at a time when, we've said it before, where our wild Atlantic salmon stocks are hitting crisis level, or hitting at a bad time. And for this to happen when they're at this stage, It's not on.
Yeah, and
just not on.
Do you know what? In fairness to the UK, it's great to see. You see, at the end of the month, they're organising a big march in London against the sewerage in the rivers. Their big march being planned for clean rivers. Fergal Sharkey's obviously involved. Jim Murray, who I did the Salmon podcast with, he's involved.
That's right.
But they're really, they're pulling in everybody, like from surfers against sewage. All the different groups are really coming in about clean waters. And they're planning a massive protest to hit the capital in London at the end of October. You'd love to see something that, in terms of maybe not just anglers, in the next kind of few years, that you see some kind of protest of people. But we've spoken again about this, how hard it is. Salmon farms, they're under the sea, they're not very visible. Unfortunately, too many people aren't aware of the harmful consequences of farmed salmon. Too many people eat it. I think it's just going to be a kind of an ongoing battle that we'll have to keep fighting and just trying to keep raising awareness.
I think that's really important. What you said there is keeping the awareness levels high. It's the only thing we've got to do.
Yeah, you feel like you're banging your head off the wall though, sometimes, don't you? Like,
when you read that, that comes out today, and just go, oh, for God's sake, it's
what's the consequences of it, or what's the long term effects of it? Like, where's it's only when you kind of start to see public uproar, like.
And also as well, what retribution will happen? Yeah. We're talking to Billy.
Yeah.
Diddly,
exactly. But you look at the uproar over a bike shed, in Leinster House. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's quantifiable. That's tangible. That's what 1.3 million. I know it was an absolute disgrace and a scandal, but a bike shed. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, look.
It's very true actually. And, you see the furor that cause.
Yeah.
Whereas, something like this, the long-term effects is on something as important to Irish culture as the wild Atlantic salmon.
And economic as well. Let's not forget.
And economic,
Let's not forget the study that was done, what was it, 15 years ago? Was it 800 million and nearly $1 billion, in terms of the economic impact of fishing? Well, look, we'll keep hammering it anyway, and hopefully just keep raising awareness of it. Before we...
My head is sore. Sorry.
It's getting, the problem is you start to get numb from the pain, don't you? Like, that's the thing. Yeah. Okay, before we get on to the episode, season's over.
That's it. Well, it's over here. That's it.
You're sounding very chipper, Tom.
Yeah.
You're like, woo, school's out.
Well, for those who don't know, we're actually recording this during the day, which only happens in the off season.
You're not shattered in the evening, after 10 hours on the lake.
You'd be kind of right. It fell off the cliff here the last week. It got really tough. We got a drop in weather temperature,
right?
In air temperature, drop, and it just it fell off, So, but that's the way it can go. September is always funny time of the year for fishing wise. Sometimes they can. You don't know what way they're going to go. The drop in temperature sometimes can spur them on.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we can't, it's the unknown variables that we don't know.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it was tough. But
and tell me this, in terms of the last few days, what's the lake like? Does it get busy with kind of anglers just wanting to get out?
It did actually the previous weekend, but I think word it got out that it got so hard.
Right.
It was very quiet.
And I wondered, did
the
storm put people off as well, like in terms of...
Yeah, well, of course, we couldn't get out Sunday. We'd have had a little day, our own club, Currane Club. We had to pull it off. Call it off. And so that's it. But heading up to doing a couple of the Midland lakes over the next couple of days now. Jackie Mahan and myself.
So the 12 days of October kick in.
Yeah.
For those who are very desperate.
For those who are like that, they're very desperate. Yeah, so Jackie and myself are doing a couple of the lakes. So that's great. Fill you in on how that went.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what I'm hoping to do over the winter season is a bit of pike fishing. Maybe on the river, maybe on the lake. So I'll try and get out because, we're recording this, during the week. The sun is out. It's about 17.
It's gorgeous.
17 degrees.
Yeah,
it's beautiful
absolutely
weather.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
So it's still nice. So look, I'll let you know how I get on with the pike. Back to this week's guest, George Kavanagh.
I think I have to thank my dear father and my uncle for this, because my father brought me over to Ireland when I was about 5 or 6. We had to come and see our dear grandfather, who wasn't well, but he did recover. And strangely enough, he obviously had to sort of keep us occupied and take us out and about. And guess where he took us to? The Falls of Innistimon in October. And guess what I was watching? I was mesmerised by these fish bouncing around trying to get up the falls. And I thought, what is this? Are these aliens or what? I kept saying to my father, is this natural? And he says, no, they're trying to go up to where they were born. And obviously he wasn't a keen fisher, but he just said, he says, like, that's where they're going. They've come from the ocean, this, that. I said, well, why don't they go back? Jokingly. But anyway, I was fascinated by it. But then the following year, I think me and my brothers were dumped on my uncle's farm for 8 weeks. Well, we used to have 8 weeks of the summer. And then lo and behold, my dear old uncle used to get his peacetime and go out onto the rocks and fish for mackerel.
Right, okay.
And then out of that, he then said, he used to sit there with a transistor radio and a bottle of beer and then look at us and said, right, now go and catch some tea. So basically I started fishing for mackerel. And that's when my obsession for fishing started.
And so obviously that's not a Clonmel or a Clare accent.
No, it's the Midlands. A Brummie, basically.
So both your
Peaky Blinder.
Peaky Blinder. So so both your parents were Irish, emigrated to England. So that's where you grew up. But it's the classic kind of immigrant story: the kid, the next generation, over to Ireland for the holidays. You're left with the family.
That's right. And I think I just fell in love with the place. I used to come back quite regularly, and also I think that's where my photography started, really, because I was quite passionate. I think it was, again, dear old father, he used to sort of like buy these cameras and he couldn't work them, and he'd just throw them at me and then I would just like play around with them. And then it just became a hobby, and then suddenly out of nothing, I became obsessed with just taking pictures. And most of them were, I think most of the ones that people were claimed to sort of most amazing pictures were taken in Ireland. So that's how it started.
So obviously it was Clare's where you were going back to all the time, was it, for the holidays and the fishing?
Well, I was obviously going to Dublin, staying with Uncle and Aunt there.
Yeah. And
then obviously then going down to Tipperary, staying there for a few days, and then we'd end up in Clare. So obviously, if you want to ask me anything about farming, I knew everything. It was just drilled into me. Milking, hay making, silicking, you name it, that, the other.
And George, tell me this, the pictures, were they of farming or, what did you like to take pictures of when you started?
Everything. Literally, just fascinated. I'll tell you what I did. I think that the early days, I took a load of pictures of the west coast of Ireland in its heyday, which is probably going back 50 years ago, So when I was about 12 or 13, the first proper SLR camera was a Pentax K1000. So I was taking loads of black and white pictures, and I was just documenting everything and anything that was going on around on the west coast, from going to the creamery, going to the sheep marts in Kilfenora, to this, to that. And actually, there's a section on my website, you can see it, it's sort of like pictures that were taken in 1978 or 19 whatever, of just the documentation I did at the time, But obviously, it led on from there. But
so, George, were you just taking them just for yourself, your own record? Or something? Like,
absolutely.
You weren't selling them on or anything like that?
No, it was just an obsession. But meanwhile, getting back to the educational side, I was very, what's the word for it? I was really into animals. I like cows, sheep, pigs, this, that, whatever. And I wanted to be, I think one of the things I wanted to do was to be a vet. But unfortunately, I screwed up on my qualifications and I ended up in photography. And it's just by chance that I took that further and went to college in Wolverhampton and did a degree, this, that, and the other, and then ended up in the smoke, ended up in London.
I'm going to get into the photography bit in a bit, but I do want to stick with the fishing for a while. And were they always complementary, or they're always side by side throughout your career? Kind of, were you always like, so even though you were working professionally in photography, as we'll hear in a bit, were you still kind of dabbling in photos of fishing and all that stuff?
I think it's just what I would say an inherent of what I was doing at the time. So I mean, I was never without a camera. Okay. So if I was going out fishing, the camera was there, but it wasn't preventing me from the flow and my attitude going out on the river, or even if it be lakes, or if it was saltwater fish, fly fishing, or whatever, it was always with me, you know. So yes, they did marry together, but I think the thing is, with my job, I was a passionate location photographer. It was all about seeing the world and the travel, and that's when I became, you know, instinctively known for what I did on a global basis for commissions for the ad agencies. You know, because they come to me for knowledge and say, "Where do you think we should take this job?" And I'd look at the budget. And the budget was really important, and I'd say, "Okay, we can shoot this in South Africa because America's going to be too expensive." And we'd shoot in South Africa at a certain time of the year. But the other part of it was, I was still fascinated by fish. So a lot of the locations I'd go to, if there was fish there, I'll give you an example. When we were doing a shoot in the Picos to Europa, which was for Mercedes trucks, and I had a day off. I went past this gorge and this river, and I could look down, and I thought, my God, look at the size of the trout in there. You know, so that was the draw. See, because it was like, and I think I'm kind of very much of an environmentalist. I love locations. I love the tranquility. I love the space. And it's just, I suppose, you know, if you respect your job and you respect your vision and respect what you do and what you see out in those locations, it all marries together, you know? So, but yeah, they do go hand in hand.
Did you ever, just thinking, you know, so if we're like an agency goes to, okay, George, where do you recommend for a location? And you're thinking, I haven't fished now off the coast of South Africa. I'd really like to. Actually, right. Did that ever?
Yeah.
You jumped on that one. I remember I was offered a job to do in New Zealand, and this is where you probably all start salivating, because obviously trout. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going all this way. It would be really cruel if I can't get the opportunity to do a couple of days brown trout fishing. Anyway, so I was on a commission for 3 weeks, and it was a massive commission. It was for the New Zealand Wool Board, so it was all to do with sheep, but it was also to do with environment as well. Okay, and there was a transition going on there at the time where there were, you know, the big sheep farms. I mean, we're not talking like what we have here, which is maybe 200 or 300 sheep. We're talking nearly 10,000, 15,000. So you've got to work out the acreage that those things are eating, you know. Anyway, in the end, the art director was pretty chilled, and I was always quite speedy on jobs, and I managed to finish the job 3 days early. And so the art director said, "Look, George, why don't you just hang out and do your own thing, and I'm going to go off to Singapore and hang out with a couple of mates." So I went, yes, South Island, Mount Cook, blah, 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 rang a guide, got a guide, went out, and that was just, I mean, I have to say, breathtaking environment, gin clear water, but spooky fish. So that was when I suddenly got the experience of pure wild brown trout in gin clear water.
I do remember what you're on about the sheep, because I kept my mouth closed whenever I was talking to farmers there, like, because I have a few sheep here, right? But yeah, I took a video once of a flock going past us to send home.
Right.
They were just running them through a gate, and after 2.5 minutes of the video going, I realized this is going to be too long to send home.
Yeah.
So I actually just stopped it, and there was still, we reckoned about 7,000 sheep had passed us while we held the car.
That's an average, isn't it?
It was, nothing big, you know, they're just moving them. But tell me this, actually, when you did go fishing for the 3 days, did you bring the camera?
I did.
The
one thing I know, because I mean, the thing in my industry, what they do is that, you know, it was always about timing. You know, the brief, the client, the job has to finish at a certain time, this, that, and the other. So I had to be very clever about not showing any imagery. But it was around the time when it was all film rather than digital. See, so I had to be very clever about, you know, when I processed it and what I'd got and whatever. But yeah. I had some pictures taken, but
George, you sound like you're the original kind of, everybody now, they seem to be there with either their phone or a camera on the river bank or the water side, and they're all the Instagram, whereas you were doing it years before just because you wanted to and you could and you had the camera and the skills to do it. Like,
yeah. And I think the thing is, I've always said this, people always used to say to me, when you go out and do your thing, which, again, I was working on a lot of formats. If you got to remember, I was working with 35mm SLRs, do you know what I mean? And a lot of the time, you had to get your exposures right, So I was working not only on that, but I was working on plate cameras. I was working on 10-8 plate cameras, 5.4 plate cameras, roll film cameras. So all of this. And you know what? The fascination was like, we always used to take Polaroid with us. But the great one was that when people says, why do you take Polaroid? And I says, well, the reason for is it's not so much the composition, because I've got it in my head what I'm going to do. It's really just to make sure that the bloody camera's working. That's it. Because then that was it. But I think a lot of it was, the challenge was just to get the best compositions and the best whatever. And I think I'll say this again, it's when you become part of that animal or that passion, it's like, 99% thought, 1% practicality. That's it. And I have the same basis with cameras when I take them to the river. I've always said, make it easy for yourself. Because I always remember on my earlier trips, when I used to do the saltwater trips and whatever, going to Mexico and Cuba, bulky cameras and this, that, and the other. So I then suddenly thought, right, I need to address this. I want something that's going to be easy to carry around and is good enough that I can process raw files and whatever. And the camera that I use all the time to take these images is just the Olympus Tough. It's spot on. It's a waterproof camera, but can still do good quality images.
It's called the Olympus Tough, is that it?
Olympus Tough.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, I must check that
out. They're about 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by about 4 or 5 centimeters, isn't that?
Yeah, they're great. Roughly. I mean, look,
they're brilliant.
And waterproof. I modified it and put a metal hood on it, which is great because it's, if you drop it. But again, you can drop these in the rivers and whatever in the lakes, and you could do some great footage underneath, and it does 4K video as well.
Yeah.
I've actually shot a series of videos that I used to do when I was out in BC and whatever. And I used to stick it on the end of a monopod and put it under the water and this, that, and the other, and film stuff and whatever.
Great.
Just keep it simple. I've always said that. Keep,
I think a camera like that, George, for somebody who just, and there's a lot of us fishermen who do want to take it a step more rather than just a phone.
Yeah.
And it's just taking a step more. A camera like that is perfect because, first of all, it's waterproof.
Yeah.
And if you do want the underwater shots, but just anyway, even if you do drop it in, as you said, you're grand. Yeah. And they do take some fantastic shots. And I know because I bring out, naturally, as a guide, I tend to bring out a lot of the guys. And you'd be surprised the amount of guys who have one of those. Yeah.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah, just one of those, because it's so handy,
If I was, again, the other thing is, if I'm going away on a big trip, if I decide to go on a trip, say like to Norway for a week or whatever, I'll take other kit with me, because there are times where I just want to just follow and watch other guys fishing and take, the pictures that I feel are not because I'm not fishing, it's just because I want to be part of the environment with them, and that's it, and get some great shots. So it's just, as it's like it's kit. If you get the kit to suit the scenarios, the situations, you're on a winner.
Any tips, George, then for somebody in terms of taking photos while you're fishing, if you're fishing on your own, or any hints or tips?
Well, I've got an anecdote here that you like. I always remember I was away and I went on a group fishing trip, and again, we went to an amazing location, and it was Mexico, and blah, 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 blah. And the next thing is this guy, I hadn't met him before. He came to me at the end of the night and he said he started seeing me sort of like editing pictures on my laptop, right? And he was going, wow. And then he showed me some pictures that he'd taken either, on this, when it was like digital wasn't that great at the time, but he just said, like, can you do anything with these? I said, no, but I can do something with you. I can get you to compose better. I can get you to, you've come all this way to this amazing location, and all I can see is a dark fish in a dark background And it doesn't
waste of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, right, so I'm going to. So the following day, he buddied up with me on a skiff, and we went off. And I showed him. I said, simply do this, 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 and this. And I said, and then suddenly it woke him up, and he went, "Oh God, I've been doing this for years," because they completely forget about the environment that they're in, and also that just the amazing backdrop. If you've got to reward yourself with an amazing picture. If you've gone that way, some people save money up for a whole year just to go on a location like that. And what they've done is they've made it look like it was shot down the road.
Yeah.
Just got a fish from a fishmonger's and just sort of like, but you know what I mean? But as I said, it's the handling, and it's the attitude, and it's all these other things as well. So
can I ask you actually, George, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot with this, any particular favourite photo, non-fishing and fishing, that you've taken?
I've always believed that whatever I do, I've always recorded something that reminds me of the special day. More importantly, I could tell you stuff about fish that I've lost that actually irritate me the most, but not so many, but ones that I feel that deserve to be seen rather than me, but more the fish. But you probably noticed I take a lot more pictures of the fish rather than me, but I think that's purely because I've always been fascinated by them. I mean, I've been doing a series of fish which are pure graphic imagery, which is more to do with fish in water, which I've kept quite secret for a while, but they're very in-depth pictures because I've been using proper gear for that. You know what I mean? Sort of catching them either coming out of the water with lots of droplets and this and that and whatever. So many sort of graphic interpretations rather, and keeping them, because I think we need to get a record of the fish that hopefully we're not going to lose. Do you know what I mean? So I'm very determined to sort of like march forward to try and keep our fishing there for the next generations or beyond and beyond and beyond, because we all know what we're going through at the moment with salmon, right? Because I've fished a lot of Scotland. I've fished a lot of Norway and Iceland and whatever, but I don't want to get into a massive debate on this. I'm sure that you've probably heard a lot before, but I think I'm really quite concerned that a lot of our rivers, they are the rivers anywhere in Ireland or in Scotland or wherever. They're the arteries and veins of life, and we need to be on them now compared to the history of what we've seen. I mean, I remember my fascination with fishing in Scotland for the very first time 35 years ago, whatever, when I was going up on the Tweed and whatever, and the history of all those fish they caught and killed, without any knowledge of the precautions of what was going to happen in the future, but quite scary. But now, I don't know if I could ever see seasons that I used to fish, which was back-end fishing, like for greybacks. They're all gone, totally gone. Our seasons are getting shorter, our runs are getting shorter, and the quality of the fish are starting to be thinner as well. And I mean, I know that I've had a very good, my first year on the shore this year, compared to, because I do fish the Nor as well. This year especially, I've been encouraged, but I'm also, I have to be positive, but I've got a degree of pessimism because there's too many other things going on that's actually worrying me, with the salmon fishing. Because as I said, we need to deal with things onshore and offshore. We need to deal as far as the tributaries that come in. They need to be maintained, looked after, as well as all the rivers that apparently are starting to get suffocated.
Is salmon fishing the first love for you, George? Or it has
been? I think, yeah, 100%. I think piscatorially, fish-wise, because I'm not living in tropical areas and I'm not fishing for bones and whatever and this, that, and the other tarpon, salmon, yes. It's like, I have a love affair, right? And I mean, I'll probably say, you're probably the same. I'm lucky to have two loves in my life, my wife first and then my fishing. So I'm not going to be questioned on that. But you know what I mean? She's happy for me to do that too as well, you know, which is, oh, you know, at least, you know.
That's a great setup.
It's a great setup, but I'm not being promiscuous. You know what I mean? So, but she's also passionate about it as well, because she knows that obviously if I dart out the door at 5 o'clock in the morning and only fish for 3 hours and I'm back for breakfast, she knows how important it is, because I'm going at the right time to fish. And you know, it's all planning, as you know. You all know that it's planning, because we need to be on the systems when the fish are there. Temperatures are right. The river's dropped after a decent spate. But I love that challenge, and I think that that's where it's hand in hand, because my job for 38 years was the challenge as well. Going to countries where people would question, say, why are you going there? The weather is not going to be as, you know. And I said, no, it's going to be fine. And I think, I suppose in my whole period of my career, I don't think I had that many weather days that I'd have to charge the client, but I was always doing my research to say, no, I'm going there. I'm positive about that location. I think that we can make it work. And I think that the fishing challenge is the same. I love it.
Well, especially if you want salmon fishing, if you want a challenge.
Yeah, I know. I have to say, you know, anybody that gets addicted to any of our piscatorials, right? Trout, you know, and the one thing I do miss is grayling. I want to go back and do my grayling. But with salmon especially, we know how endangered they are, which it's not so much what I learned about them 30 or 40 years ago. It's what I'm learning more and more about them now that counts. And that's what I want to put forward. I feel that I want to be able to sort of, it's like every fish that I handle in the net, in the water, obviously, I always check them over. I want to make sure that if they, and you know, those springers, if they're pristine, I am so rewarded. I believe that that fish deserves everything and anything, needs to go back into the system, needs to be able to go up and mature into its red colours and then spawn and hopefully produce a stock of fish for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So yeah, there's so much, and I'm driven, totally driven, you know. And as I said, if I have one good fish a week, I'm happy.
Well, so how often would you get out during the season then, George?
I've done all right this year. I mean, I think I started, would it be late April? I'd obviously started running around all the systems. I've been doing the Nor. The Nor has had a desperate year, unfortunately. Last year it was kind to me. I've been to the Blackwater, but I think the shore, to me, if I could live on the doorstep, and it's not so far, it's only an hour down the road, right?
Where are you living, George?
I live just outside, I live in a steeg.
All right, yeah.
Which is, you know, just sort of the south of Thomastown. So basically, I live just outside in a steeg, up in the hill, Mount Alto, up in the hills.
Okay.
But so I'm kind of only 10 minutes drive from the north.
Yeah. But the shore is what you found has been fishing best for you.
I found it to be, a very, very stunning system. Really,
I can hear it in you there.
Oh,
you just it comes across.
Yeah,
sure is the one for you.
Oh God, yeah, and actually there's some good trout in there as well.
I know, yeah.
And are you fishing downstream Clonmel? Is it George down there, Sheelin?
Yeah, so I've kind of become a member. Oh, you're going to like this one. I've suddenly found out one of the guys that has been a member since the year dart is one of my relatives. Didn't know that. So anyway, we get on very well. So yeah, I fish from St Thomas's, St Thomas's Bridge. So anything north of there and south of there. So basically, we've now acquired a section which we're addressing and looking after up at Knocklofty, which apparently, again, some decent pools up there, really decent pools up there. So yeah, I'm on it, and I know met a character last year that apparently runs and owns a section down near Sheelin as well. So he's invited me to go and fish there as well. So Yeah, if I could, yeah, I want to adopt the whole river.
Good sized fish that have been caught in the system. I've been hearing rumours of good fish this year.
I would say the average size was about 14.
Very good.
Which I can't know,
Nice.
you know. But I know they get decent, and I know that there's been a reputation on that river to have them anything up to serious double figures, like 25, something like that.
And you only moved to, so tell us actually, so I suppose you were fishing, because you're in the UK, but so most of your salmon fishing would have been Scotland.
Scotland, yeah.
So how does the shore compare?
I would say one of the advantages of having these systems here where I am now, because I used to have to travel quite a distance to get to some decent rivers. So if you imagine when I was living in Oxfordshire, I'd have to be 5.5 hour drive to get to the Tweed.
Right.
Then after the Tweed, I'd do the Spey.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then once I've done the above the Spey, I used to fish all those systems at the top, which was the Neva, Hallidale, Borgie.
You fished the Hallidale. Yeah.
Hallidale.
I remember looking at that once. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely great. And the one thing I like about them is they're more what I would call stalking rivers. You know what I mean? So you can actually.
Yeah.
Right.
I know what you're saying. There's a bit more of a hunt going on.
Yeah. Right? And also you don't feel, like I fish rivers that are what I used to compare like to people who know in the UK. It says, oh, it's twice the width of the M25. It's like vast, right? Yeah. Whereas up in the Hallidale, you can just see these pools, and you can just see, and a lot of it is not double handers. You could have the most probably a switch rod, single handers, and it's so nice to be in control where you put the fly and how you can imitate the take with a salmon, right?
Yeah.
And also that the Neva is a stunning piece of water as well. But they're kind of protected because there's no industries up there, Yeah. They're kind of really nice.
They're in remote areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also that, as I would call some parts are a bit what I call billy goat. You've got to do some real walking and hacking to get to some of the pools. Yeah. Whereas,
which also adds to the hunting stalking side of things, doesn't
massively.
It? Yeah.
Massively. And that's probably, it's one of the things that I've always said. I like, I'm driven by remote locations. I'm quite happy to sit there for a while and take it all in. And, I suppose it's inherent of like what I did as a photographer. Do you know what I mean? I was always looking for the ultimate location. I was always looking for the ultimate appealing sort of light and whatever the structure, the texture, the this, the that. And it's the same with the fishing. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people are obsessed with, I think over the years, I used to see a lot of people that were so obsessed with how many they used to catch. And I said, no, I always remember when I was in Norway on the Laxell, I used to go to the Laxell for one reason, and that was because the fishing was 24/7. I'd done Russia, but the fishing on the Laxell is more relaxed. You can go out whenever you want, fish whenever you want, but it wasn't about the numbers. It was also about the quality.
Yeah.
And if I could walk away from that system with one good quality fish, if you're going to ask me about a fish, yes, £35 maybe, but great scrap, great fight, beautiful fish, fin perfect, bar of silver, fresh off the tide, and just the best reward for the timing that I did to get that fish, and to even have your mate there and you're hugging each other thinking, it's worth it, George, it's so worth it, so worth it. It's true, it is worth it,
Right, yeah.
I mean, I could travel to the other end of the world just for that one fish, that's it. I don't want hundreds, I was never really a fishing exploitist, do you know what I mean, where you just want to get numbers. And I used to hear people bragging about, oh, I've caught 20 today, I've caught 10 today, I've caught 5 today. You want to satisfy yourself, and actually the locations, if you're in the right location, does that not satisfy you? Yes, it does. You could sit there and just watch.
Should do. But that's amazing. So then, like, 'cause when we got onto that, I mean, when you were in the UK, you had a fair bit of traveling to do. I mean, like as you said, 5 hours to the Tweed, and that was the closest.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, like, it must
right.
be,
Yeah.
it must be fantastic. I mean, you're talking now. It's a bit of a trek to the shore, you say.
An hour.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's poor. Yeah, because I'm saying it now because you get to an age, don't you? Well, I'm not that old, but you get to an age and you suddenly think, oh God, yeah. But no, if I know it's right, the conditions are right, the river level's right, temperatures are right, bit of cloud cover, early mornings, I'm out the door. I'm gone. Simple as. And I don't, as I said, I don't want to make anything complicated. You don't want baggage. You don't want this. You don't want. Okay, you might get a buddy that rings you up and says, "Oh, well, I'll meet you there." I says, "Fine," but I'm normally there before you. And I'm just going to say, "Right, I just want to be on it," and that's it. But
since you moved over 3 years ago, have you been around much at all, Farrell, or is there places on your radar that you want to go fish?
Massive. I managed to get out and do the Currane for a couple of days.
Excellent.
And we went up there for the Mayfly. And I'd never done, in all the years I'd seen it, and I even witnessed somebody in Scotland doing it, dapping.
Right.
I managed to have a go at dapping. I did enjoy it, but I felt I just can't sit there with a 15-foot rod. I'd rather be moving. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather be casting and looking to see reactions on the water and just casting to a fish that wants to take your fly and whatever. But I want to go back to the Currane, definitely. I'll be honest with you, the only system that I ever fished many years ago, because it was down to a good old friend of mine who was obviously a good 20 years older than me at the time. And he used to come and fish the Owen Moor and Carramore Lake and Duff. And I came over for the 2 or 3 spring seasons with him. Awesome. Loved it up there. Especially Carramore. I couldn't get over it. The fact is that you got a good ripple on that lake, and to see that fly just curl around and see a salmon run through and take your fly, it's just something else. I'd never caught salmon that way before on a lake. Never.
Had you not? No.
Never. And I thought, God, what? And he's got a very large area to take all the leader off your reel, hasn't he? But yeah, it's a fascinating area and quite remote. Would I fish all those other places like the Moy? No, I don't know. It doesn't. I'm not great at urban environments. I prefer to be more rural. You know what I mean? Yeah. I quite like the ambience. Being out in the middle of nowhere. I used to do some of those loughs in Scotland.
You wouldn't like the Ridge Pool then, or the Galway Weir? I
got offered this year to do it. They said, if it's right, would you come? And I said, well, I'll come and have a look. But no, I don't know. It doesn't, it doesn't sing to me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just feels, it's one of the things that I found about the Tweed. I used to fish some of the other areas of the Tweed, which is either north or the lower reaches, like Bergen Dub and whatever, which are great. But, the junction in Kelso didn't really fascinate me at all. You know what I mean? Because it's like you're in the town, you've got the cars, and you've got noise and this and that. I'm more fascinated by. That's probably one of the things why I reached out to do BC quite a few years back. I went to fish sort of like the Skeena, Kitty Mat, Kavanagh. Unbelievable backdrops, and I like to see the nature happening as well, like bears, wolves, this, that, bald eagles, or deer. But yeah, it just creates a bigger picture, a more romantic picture, a more passionate picture when you've got all those things happening. Because I could sit there for hours. If there's nature in the environment, I'll sit there and watch for hours. I do get a few times, but you're not going to fish today.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I remember once when I was in Scotland, going to have a look at the Junction Pool, and I've heard so much about it, and I remember being completely underwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was I don't know, and to be honest with you, I don't know what I was expecting.
Yeah.
But I'd heard so much about it, and then I just saw this piece of water, but it was around.
Yeah. I think the thing is, it's not a turn off. It's just that you kind of think, well, I suppose. I think for anybody starting out, a lot of novices will go to places like the Junction. Do you know what I mean? Because they just think it's easy if they feel like they don't want to be fishing any longer. They'll just get out and go into the town and go to the bar and get a drink, and that's it. But I've always liked remote areas. I'm fascinated by them. You see, I think you read more into them if you're on your own, because you're kind of trying to work and fathom out stuff, and how it works, how the environment works, how the fish start to, I could bore you for hours on this shit, mate. So I'm not going to. But apart from that, I don't know. I think the thing is, as I said, my most important thing is, because I've got a very good friend of mine who's setting up, which I hope to go back to in October. He's setting up this river action march in London. Do you hear about this?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Big number. Dear old Charles Watson. I did some saltwater fishing with him. I also did a lot of fishing with him on the Itching and the Test and whatever. But and it's important that that we all kind of think about what we have on our doorstep. You know what I mean? Because when I first came over here, I thought I was going to end up living on the west coast of Ireland when we were looking for a property. And then suddenly I'm thinking, well, this is the first love, the wife. I thought, no, I can't do that. I needed to be able to get to Dublin or get to Kilkenny or get a big town or this or that or whatever. And Galway's fine, but I suddenly thought, no. And when I saw these rivers, I'd never, ever witnessed the shore in the north and the Barrow. But the Barrows, well, we all know what the Barrow is, but I thought, this is awesome. This could be on my doorstep. I've been looking for a river to be on my doorstep for years, not one that's 5 hours drive away or even 10 or 11 hours drive away, which is right up on the north coast. And it's just that hassle of getting there, and also the enjoyment of the fact that now that I'm watching these systems work for me rather than against me, when I used to travel up to Scotland, I'm watching them, the spate happen and then drop, and then I'd go out and have a drive around and look at it and say, right, it's going to be perfect this afternoon. I'm going to go in there and fish. You know what I mean? So they're all calculations, and I love it. That's the one thing I love about it.
And that is the beauty of having them at your doorstep, which they now are.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. George, it's been really good talking to you. Really fascinating. I'd really love to hear a bit about the photography as well, because it's something I have a little bit of an interest in. But listen, before you go, everybody who comes on the show, we do ask them a question. So I'm going to ask you now, what is your most memorable fish on the fly?
I would have to say it's a salmon.
We have an ongoing thing here, George. See,
I know you're probably going to say, "Oh, what about the trout?" Yeah, of course, yeah.
Back to the salmon.
I'll tell you what. if it's fresh water, without a doubt, a salmon, 100%.
Any particular one, or even one from this season, or?
Oh yeah, I generally think they have to be springers to me, personally, fresh. After I would say this year alone, I think probably one of the best was one of the ones I had off the shore. I know that I'm not bragging. I've had a few, but one that I had off, which was good quality fish of 16 pounds, beautiful shoulders on him, fin perfect. Everything right the way down to the adibus fin, everything about him, no marks. I thought, you can't beat it, can you? When people, I'm even on that day, I remember I was there with two other colleagues, and they said, "Are you going to continue fishing?" I said, "No, I'm happy. I'm done. That's it. You go, you fish." But I mean, I had 3 or 4, but I said, no, you can. I'm happy. I'm going to go and sit and have a cup of tea and watch the flow. That's it. I think if we can get everybody into that mindset, it's I'm not saying it's rare, but it can be done. It's like putting somebody in an environment that they've never fished before, and basically it's really down to them to just suss it out, which is I've always done. Suss it out, sit and watch everything. You know, some of those places in Scotland, I have to be honest with you, the further reaches of the Borgie, when you're walking and walking and walking and walking for miles, and you go up there and you just ask the question, how the hell did these fish get up here? Seriously.
Mm.
You know, and you know, it's those tributaries again where they're aiming for, but they are the stars in my heart. You know what I mean? They are simple.
But you know what, George and Tom, it kind of sometimes it takes somebody to come in from outside to kind of shine a light on it and maybe make you appreciate more what you've got on your doorstep as well, because we can be giving out a lot about the fishing, the quality of fishing, but from what you've said, George, you've done all right since you've come over, so and long may it last. Thanks a million for joining us. Just I suppose, look, I'd recommend for people maybe to follow you, they can go to it's Instagram, george.kavanagh.58. You'll see some great photos there, and then your website, George, for all your photos.
Absolutely, they can just wander through all of the stuff that I've done over the years, whatever, blah blah blah. So but at some point, I'm actually going to try and collate a load of fishing imagery, and put it out there.
Yeah, I think
so but I'll do that.
Yeah, that'd be great interest. GeorgeKavanagh.com. Anyway, for anybody that's interested, you can really delve more into George's work there, and it's some very, very high quality stuff, fishing and non-fishing stuff as well. George, thanks again for joining us.
And you.
Our thanks to George for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.